Following what has been a crazy day of moves across the NHL and specifically for the Leafs as well, Brad Treliving has broke the silence and dropped a bombshell on the Leafs' plans, both including free agency and one trade in particular that has fans fired up. To break that down and discuss what this means going forward, folks. Before we get into it all, there's a ton to go over today. Make sure to stay tuned to the end of the video, but also make sure to hit that subscribe button. You guys have been absolute beasts with support lately. About 71% of you are watching right now aren't subscribed. Darius, there is a lot to go over today. Moves have happen across the NHL like crazy. The Leafs included. We'll have more videos today into tomorrow on all of that and everything. But Brad Treliving spoke to the media and broke the silence and dropped some very, very big information surrounding the outlook of this team. And let's dive right into it now. Let's preface it by starting with this. So Treliving is speaking soon, which means his major work is done for the day. So you can rest assured, we assume, for at least the rest of today, no major signings or trades will be occurring. However, crazier things have happened here. And Darius, let's start with the big piece of news, and also stay tuned to the end. There's some interesting tidbits you're going to want to not miss out on because there's a ton to go over here. Brad Treliving on Mitch Marner. Let's start with Mitch Marner, then we'll dive into some of the trade stuff in a minute here. So basically said, we approached Mitch to engage him on a contract. As is his right, Mitch and his representative wanted to wait until the year was done. As negotiated, Mitch has a full no-move clause, so he controlled the process. So we got some information on the Mitch Marner situation finally, and I'm ready to put it to bed, essentially. And we'll dive back into that in a minute. But Darius, I want to get your thoughts on this here as well. They asked him directly what comes next this summer for the Leafs, and he made it very clear as it pertains to, of course, replacing Mitch Marner. They want to improve the top of their lineup, the top six of their lineup. And of course, that's going to be to replace Mitch Marner.
Absolutely. And I think that Brad Treliving's comments today were very interesting. He didn't specifically say we're going after a top six winger. He didn't specify exactly what they're going after. So now I'm wondering if they're going after a center, and maybe John Tavares is, they're envisioning him playing on the wing. I think this is actually going to get a lot more interesting than any of us have realized. And now we know the plan. It's not through free agency, right? There's nobody left at this point. There's nobody that's going to make an impact that's left in free agency. Like, maybe they will make an impact, but in their role. I don't think there's any top six, wingers, maybe Ehlers. But do you want Ehlers, and do you want him for $9 million? I'm not so sure about that, right? So I do wonder at this point if they go after another center. We'll get to that later. There's a couple other things that I thought were very interesting that Treliving said, including bringing in a lot of guys, and we're going to touch on them in another video, that have the passion, that want to be here, and they're going to play hard for this team. And I really like that. And I feel like they're changing the way that, this team looks. I love it. And I am very curious to see what Brad Treliving does, because it sounds like it's going to be via trade. And I don't even think it's going to be like this week. This could happen in August. I think they're going to take their time, really, really look into what they need to satisfy the rest of this team, and it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be a crazy summer.
Yeah, if anything is clear, take it out of this. They are looking to upgrade in a big way. Now, it might not come, like you mentioned, via free agency. You can see here David Alter. Brad Treliving says the free agent pool is looking thinner and thinner when it comes to replace the hole that Mitch Marner left. It sounds like having cap space and the possibility of a big trade down the road may be the play for them. So again, I still think they sign a guy like Mangiapane or someone of that, maybe Anthony Beauvillier, something like that, which, again, not the most exciting moves, but it's become very clear from the press conference, and if you actually listen to it, that they are prioritizing specifically a big move, but it might not be immediately. And most of the guys now are off the board. You mentioned it. Mikael Granlund, he signed a 3x7, which Leafs maybe could have done if they really liked the player. There's a lot of players got, Tanner Jeannot, all those guys, Brandon Tanev. A lot of the depth guys in the free agency got signed, including some other, Leafs as well, got signed elsewhere. But it seems like, and like we've been talking about all along here, another trade seems to be on the horizon, and they have some assets to be able to trade, but I'm also curious to see what kind of players, which we'll dive into in a minute here, could be on the horizon here. But this opens up, you mentioned it doesn't say a center or anything like that, a Nazem Kadri type player here, and there's been a lot of, I guess, rumblings we can say about Nazem Kadri returning to the Leafs. And based on his comments, I'm not saying like directly Nazem Kadri, but boy, oh boy, does it start to make some sense the more you think about it and the more that you look at the actual players available. And Brad Treliving has made it clear here, they're going after a big fish via the trade market, because you can't get top six guys for cheap, and the Leafs are going to have to make a move here. And I think Nazem Kadri is going to be at the top of their list, and they've been reported to be very interested in him for a while.
And the Leafs have already started to fill out the rest of their bottom six. They're signing guys like Lorentz. They made a couple more moves today, which we're going to cover in another video. So they're starting to fill in the rest of the bottom six. So that being said, they still have a lot of cap space left, right, that they can use, that they can weaponize. And not only that, we know that they're trying to, and I think eventually they are going to trade away David Kampf and Calle Jarnkrok, which would free up another almost $5 million. So if they wanted Nazem Kadri in a trade, they could get him because he makes $7 million. They could absolutely make it work if they wanted to. And could you imagine, Michelli, who we just mentioned, could be playing on the top line with some strong players and really offensively minded players. And Austin Matthews is a great two-way player. I don't want to take that away from him, of course. But, with Matthews, maybe he's playing on the top line with Matthews and Nyes. And you have a second line of, centered by Nazem Kadri, John Tavares, and William Nylander. Like, that would be a strong top six, I think. Michelli is a bit of a wild card, of course. I expect him to play in the top six, though. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But they continue to fill in the rest of the bottom six. You have Nick Waz, your third line center now. You have Scott Lawton, right? You can add. We're not even talking about Bobby McMahon. He's still on this team, right? Alex Steves is gone. We're going to touch on that in another video as well. A couple other guys are gone, but they're starting to fill in this team. And if they make a trade like a Nazem Kadri, he brings the passion. He's won a Stanley Cup before. You know that he wants to bring one back home here, I think, if he were to become a Leaf again. So could be a very interesting fit. And who signed him to that contract in Calgary? It was Brad Treliving. So it could make some sense, I think, at this point. It didn't maybe a month ago. We've covered this before. I don't know if it made sense at the time, considering the circumstance. This team looks a lot different now.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Let us know what your thoughts are on the Kadri situation. Leafs have been linked in the past, and with a lot of the other options gone, it will make some sense there. But let's dive into some other things here now. Brad Treliving spoke out on signing recently acquired Michael Pezzetta. He said it gives us some more depth, and he's got a skill set in terms of his physicality, good foot speed, and able to get in on the forecheck. Excellent teammate. Those are the boxes he checks, and happy to have him with us. And again, this signing allowed them to keep their cap flexibility, allowed everything to remain fluid here in this situation, which is obviously fantastic news. And ultimately here with, Michael Pezzetta, there is not a lot of upside, but there's not a lot of downside either. Like, yeah, worst case, he comes out and he's really bad, similar to Ryan Reeves last year, except without the big cap hit. The upside is if he puts up 15, 20 points like he has in previous years, 15-ish, he could be a very valuable player, especially seeing with a lot of these guys are getting paid. Tanner Jeannot getting paid a lot of money. Like even Brandon Tanev, I don't know if that's a contract the Leafs would have liked. I believe 3 years, $2.5 million. Like that seems a little bit more than what more term and around the same AAV, but maybe in a bit more AAV than Brad Treliving thought would be, or rather than we thought would be, fair for him for Brad Treliving. I like the Michael Pezzetta signing, and he likes it as well. I can see her posting on his Instagram. Like everyone, the culture has completely shifted from Matthew Nyes to Michael Pezzetta, and Matthew Nyes as well. Brad Treliving spoke out on him. Big piece of business. We think Matthew is scratching the surface in terms of what he's capable of. He was very committed from the outset to be here and wanted to be here. So Darius, it seems like the culture now has shifted to a bunch of Leafs who want to be in Toronto and love the culture, and I'm excited for it. And to be honest, the more that this goes on, I don't hate this move. Maybe it'll end up being nothing big. I really think he's going to play a pretty, not pivotal factor on the fourth line, but I'd say he starts October opening night on the fourth line.
Well, the thing for me is heading into next season, I think, Brad Treliving's talked about it. Craig Berube's talked about it. Everybody's on board now. Everybody's going to play a big role, and Pezzetta is going to be a part of that. It could be a smaller role than Austin Matthews, of course, but it's a low-risk signing. I like it. And he's got the passion in his veins. You can see it. He posted on Instagram. He's back home. He's a former Sudbury Wolf, and he's from Toronto. So I'm sure he's excited to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, and he's going to, put everything out there. And we know the way that he plays and what he brings to a lineup. That's why they brought him in. So he's going to, bring those things to a lineup. And like you said, if he can put up 15 points along the way, again, last year wasn't great, that's for sure, but he has in the past at the NHL level. So if he can get back to doing that as well, put the puck in the back of the net here and there, and of course, bring everything else, it's a pretty good signing. And like you mentioned with Nyes too, the DNA change, like we've been talking about, it's not necessarily the personnel, but it's just like, I want to be here. I want to win here. And we're going to build a very strong team. And the Leafs, a lot of people are saying Marner's leaving. They're not even going to make the playoffs next year. Give me a break. The Leafs are still a really good team. They're probably one of the best teams in the league. And I'm really excited to see how they continue to fill up this team. Because so far, man, Brad Treliving is cooking.
Yeah, and we'll keep you up to date with all the latest. Let us know down below all thoughts on all of this. Tons of things coming out, and the possibility of a big trade. It is going to be on the horizon soon, and we'll keep you up to date. Cheers.